After years of being last, my family expected me to save them from financial ruin. I told them no. My conditions? A complete family overhaul. Thanksgiving supper was what I expected when I entered my childhood home. All were gathered around the dining room table, smelling turkey. My sister Sarah and her husband Jake discussed their $35,000 kitchen renovation. My mother Linda was frigid when I asked for aid with my apartment security deposit. "James, you need to understand something. Your sister's family will always come first in our priorities. You are always last." David, my father, nodded. "That's just how it is, son." The words shook me physically. I sat dumbfounded, fork halfway to my mouth, as my mother's words hit me. After the shock, something else took over. A dreadful clarity. This wasn't news. This was the first public statement. I set my fork and surveyed the table. Sarah chopped her turkey into neat squares as she had since childhood. Jake scrolled through his phone, perhaps viewing kitchen renovation photos. My parents switched topics as if they hadn't just hurt their son. Memory after memory flooded back, sharper than before. Our parents presented Sarah with a metallic blue Honda Civic with that new vehicle scent when she turned 17. I watched from my bedroom window as they gave her the keys, all three smiling and cuddling in the driveway. I turned 17 8 months later and received a cake and card that said, "Happy birthday, son." No car or explanation, just the implicit agreement that Sarah's milestones mattered more. College was terrible. Northwestern University, $50,000 per year. Our parents paid every cent without hesitation. They traveled to Evanston on move-in day with a leased truck full with Sarah's dorm furnishings, a mini fridge, matching bedding, a desktop computer, and enough clothes for a boutique. That summer I worked 2 jobs to save every penny for community college. Dad told me they'd already overspent on Sarah's schooling when I inquired about school expenditures. "You understand, right, James? Sarah's always been the academic one. This is her shot." It made sense. All right. I knew I was alone, so I worked nights at a warehouse, weekends at a grocery store, and any spare time doing neighborhood lawn care. After 2 years of community college, I transferred to the state university on a partial academic scholarship I won through determination. My parents missed my community college graduation because Sarah was hosting a baby shower that weekend. They prioritized pastel decor and gift bags over their son's success. Sarah's wedding cost $60,000. 300 attendees, open bar, 7-piece band. The reception venue was magazine-worthy with crystal chandeliers and centerpieces that cost more than I made in a month. I was expected to wear a rented tuxedo and grin for photos while my parents proudly celebrated their daughter's fairy tale day. Sarah was pregnant with her second kid when I graduated from the public university with a computer science degree 2 years later. Mom and Dad attended her baby shower instead of my graduation. I crossed the stage and looked for recognizable faces in the audience. Nothing. I contacted them that night to tell them about my first real job. "That's nice, sweetie," Mom responded. "I couldn't talk long since Sarah's experiencing contractions and we need to get to the hospital." $13,000 given without hesitation to help Sarah and Jake buy their first house, a modest 3-bedroom ranch in a good area. Dad frowned when I asked about borrowing $500 for textbooks next semester, saying money was scarce. "You're young and single, James. You can figure it out. Sarah has a family to think about and the babysitting." My parents drove 30 minutes across town in the evenings to watch Sarah's kids so she and Jake could date. Never charged for babysitting. Avoided complaining about the inconvenience. They never discussed how it affected their social plans. Mom sighed like I'd asked for a kidney when I asked if they could babysit my apartment while I went camping with pals over the weekend. "We're not getting any younger, James. We can't be running all over creation." Now the trend was obvious. Every family gathering focused on Sarah's latest dilemma or success. Her promotion at her part-time yoga studio, her children's piano recital and soccer games, and her toilet training and homework challenges. After discussing my profession, relationships, aspirations and desires, the subject would return to Sarah within minutes. Mom said, "That's great about your promotion, James. Speaking of work, Sarah's been thinking about going back to nursing school. Maybe you could help her research programs, even small things, car insurance." I'd paid my own car insurance since I turned 18, scraping together money each month for my used Honda bought with warehouse wages. Our parents paid Sarah's automobile insurance at 32. When I mentioned this once, Dad shrugged and said Sarah had more expenses to worry about. I felt something change at that Thanksgiving meal as my family discussed Sarah's kitchen renovation plans. The intense, familiar pain persisted. However, something new and almost relieving was underlying. They eventually spoke up. The fact that had molded every family connection for 25 years. Sarah is first, James last. Always. Excuse me, I needed the bathroom. The familiar hallway with family portraits was walked. School photos of Sarah from kindergarten to college, Sarah's wedding pics, Sarah's kids' school and newborn photos. 3 of the dozens of images on the walls were of me standing in that restroom, looking at my reflection in the same mirror I'd used as a child. My choice changed everything. I would prioritize myself first if they prioritized me last. Transformation took time but was complete. I quietly reshaped my life around a simple premise over 18 months. In the absence of my family's investment, I would focus on me. I was doing better than my family thought in my career. I got a job at a downtown tech startup with a scarcely recognized computer science degree. They thought I was broke, yet I'd been promoted twice. After leading a client database system optimization project, my income rose from $42,000 to $95,000. Here's what nobody knew. I lived like I made $42,000. I had the same modest apartment, 10-year-old Honda, and careful budgeting from years of financial necessity. Every extra cash now went toward constructing something bigger instead of survival. I opened 3 accounts at 3 firms and invested in index funds, growth stocks, and a tiny Bitcoin portfolio. I read financial planning books at lunch and watched investment tutorials after work. My portfolio reached $210,000 while my family thought I was barely surviving. Our startup's Silicon Valley venture capital funding changed everything. I received stock options as a key employee. If the company went public as expected, the options could be worth $500,000 in 3 years. Money was just one aspect of the revolution. Psychological change was greater. I quit participating in family patterns that had depleted my energy and self-worth for decades. When Sarah needed furniture moved, I had other ideas. I gently declined my parents' pricey group dinners where everyone had to split the bill equally regardless of wealth. I booked my own family vacation when they wanted to charge me a week's wages. Separate Christmas plans began simple. I skied in Vermont with business pals on Christmas Eve instead of driving 2 hours to visit extended family. Instead of the usual Mother's Day lunch where we discussed Sarah's parenting issues, I bought terrific tickets behind home plate at a baseball game. I was also dating. I met Rachel Adams, a nurse practitioner, in a coffee shop near work. She understood mine without judgment because she was smart, independent, and had a complicated upbringing. How Rachel listened to my work, interests, and objectives impressed me most. She recalled my projects and sought further inquiries days later. It was unlike family conversations when I felt invisible. Rachel heard the favoritism narrative first outside my family. One evening on her apartment balcony, we were eating takeout Chinese food and talking about our childhoods when I explained why I never mentioned family reunions or holiday preparations. She remarked, "It sounds like they trained you to expect less," gently. "And you learned that lesson so well that even now, when you're succeeding, you still hide your achievements," she said. I was so conditioned to hide my accomplishments that even my closest friends didn't know my financial success or professional progression. I learned to shrink to avoid disrupting the family dynamic where Sarah was the star and I was the supporting figure. Rachel contested that view. She suggested I apply for work leadership roles. She celebrated my investment successes as her own. She suggested I speak at industry conferences after I cited my reputation in online technical forums. About this time, I started therapy with Dr. Olivia Harris, a family therapist who specialized in adult children recovering from narcissistic families. After Dr. Harris outlined the dynamics, I understood golden child and scapegoat. Your family needed someone to carry the emotional burden of their dysfunction, she said in one session. Sarah was the success story, the child who validated their parenting. You were the problem child, the one whose troubles let Sarah's triumphs shine brighter. Therapy helped me see that my family's treatment wasn't about my worth. They wanted a stable system with predictable duties. Sarah was the golden child who did no wrong. I was the scapegoat for everything wrong and disregarded when things went well. Instead of angry arguments, Dr. Harris helped me create calm, consistent time, energy, and emotional restrictions. When family group texts requested money or made me feel guilty about missing occasions, I stopped answering. I learned to avoid manipulation with common language. That doesn't work for my schedule. I have other commitments that day. Money was the most crucial boundary. I stopped expecting to help with family costs for nothing. No more group gifts where I paid for gifts I didn't choose. No more unpaid emergency loans. No more splitting restaurant costs while Sarah and Jake had pricey steaks and I had salad. My friend Ethan Reed from work noticed the change in my confidence and demeanor. "You seem different lately," he commented Friday afternoon as we finished a job. "Right. More focused. Like you figured something out." I discovered something. I'd learned familial loyalty doesn't need selflessness. Love doesn't tolerate mistreatment. Success doesn't have to be disguised to keep others happy. I tested my new bounds sooner than intended. My phone rang on a March Wednesday night. The screen displayed Sarah's name. She only called when she wanted something, so I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "James," she shakily said. "I need to talk to you. Something terrible has happened, and I don't know what we're going to do." Sarah was sobbing too hard to understand. Through sobs and faltering syllables, a story worse than I anticipated unfolded. This ideal world my family had spent years guarding was built on lies, fraud, and financial crimes. Jake's real estate career struggled for months. He wanted to close sales and create his name in a competitive market with established agents. He made more unsafe decisions due to Sarah's expectations and my parents' appreciation for his entrepreneurial energy and the pressure to preserve their lifestyle. He lied on mortgage applications, income statements, employment verification letters, and credit reports. He invented a complex system of phony paperwork to enable unqualified borrowers get mortgages they couldn't pay. The commission checks were big. Jake looked to have found his niche in real estate. However, mortgage fraud is a federal offense, and the inquiry lasted months. Bank auditors identified similarities in Jake's applications, employment verification calls to disconnected lines, tax paperwork with anomalies that raised red lights in underwriting systems, and income estimates that didn't match IRS records. Federal officials conducted a search warrant at Jake's office and uncovered a box of fake documents with his signature. His real estate license was suspended immediately for investigation. Criminal charges followed 3 days later. Jake faced up to 20 years in federal prison, but his offenses were only half the story. Sarah lived a financial fantasy that made mortgage fraud appear inevitable while he fabricated applications. She opened credit cards in her, Jake's, and my parents' names with authorization. The debt was unmanageable at $40,000. Sarah owed that on 7 credit cards. Designer outfits for her and kids. Weekend getaways and expensive dinners. The kitchen renovation cost twice as much as budgeted. Her unfinished private yoga instructor certification training. Their spending was put on credit cards in hopes that Jake's wages would catch up. House payments halted 8 months earlier. Jake claimed Sarah he was paying the mortgage, but he was actually paying credit card minimums and daily costs. The foreclosure notice received 5 weeks prior. They had 90 days to pay or lose the house. The Tuesday before, Sarah's automobile was repossessed. The tow truck arrived while she was loading groceries. She called a neighbor to retrieve her children from the rear seat while she saw her Honda Pilot get hooked up and drive away. The shame was terrible. Practicality was worse than humiliation. She could no longer drive to work or school. Private school tuition was 2 months late. The kids' school was patient, knowing that families had temporary financial problems, but patience was wearing out. That morning, the principal called to tell the kids would have to switch schools if the account wasn't paid by Friday. Legal fees rose daily. Jake's criminal defense counsel demanded a $22,000 retainer to start. They'd spent $26,000 from their savings and Sarah's nursing retirement money. If the matter went to trial, the attorney projected $55,000 in legal fees. Sarah's confession about their denial may have been the most painful. Friends and extended relatives were unaware of their finances. Sarah pretended to succeed until it all fell apart. She shared family vacation images on social media while charging credit cards. She ignored mailbox collection warnings and bought expensive birthday gifts for the kids. Children were asking Sarah questions she couldn't answer. Why did Daddy seem angry all the time? Why were there strange men in suits coming to the house? Why couldn't they go to their friends' birthday parties anymore? Sarah couldn't hide the truth. She whispered, "James," on the phone, "I fear losing the house, kids' schools, and Jake to prison. I don't know how we got here or how to fix it." I saw the irony. Sarah was the family hero, the golden child who could do no wrong and put her wants first for years. The lifestyle my parents promoted has led to financial collapse and possible federal crimes. As Sarah cried about their credit scores being damaged and their inability to get loans or rent, I understood something fundamental was happening. The family dynamic that had made me the failure and Sarah the success had reversed. I was stable and secure because I'd learnt sensible, steady financial habits from being ignored. Sarah's entitled impulsive spending, praised as her finest life, caused calamity. Have you told Mom and Dad about all of this? I asked. Sarah said, some of it? They're already panicking about what they can do to help, and their retirement savings can't cover something this big. Jake's parents said they won't help because he defaulted on loans from them before. James, you're the only one who might be able to help us. There it was. I'd subconsciously prepared for this call my whole life. When my always last family would need me first. How I would use that power was the question. I need time to think about this, Sarah, I add. This is a lot to process. She quickly questioned, how much time? Because the foreclosure deadline is next month and Jake's sentencing hearing is in 5 weeks. 24 hours, I said. I'll call you tomorrow evening. I realized everything would change after hanging up the phone. After 25 years of telling me I didn't matter, my family would learn how much I did. Our emergency family meeting was Sunday afternoon at my parents' house. Sarah had contacted ahead to request James's presence for family discussions. Inference was plain. No assistance was requested. Rescue was anticipated. Sarah sat on the living room couch with tissues in her lap, her eyes red from sobbing. Jake sat alongside her, staring at his hands with the disappointed look of someone whose lies had caught up with him. My parents looked older and more anxious than I'd seen in years in their identical chairs. Financial statements, credit card bills, court papers, and foreclosure notices littered the coffee table. I found a calculator next to my father's handwritten yellow legal pad. A family's financial woes in numbers. James, my mother said when I sat down, we need to talk about how you're going to help your sister through this crisis. Not if, but how. The conversation was structured around my compliance. Dad cleared his throat and took the legal pad. We've been going through all the numbers, son, and we think we have a plan that could work, but it requires everyone in the family to step up. He read his calculations. Sarah and Jake needed $75,000 to handle their urgent issues. This would pay the mortgage to stop foreclosure, credit card bills, children's school tuition, and Jake's legal fees. Now, your mother and I can contribute $27,000 from our retirement savings, Dad said. We know that's a sacrifice for us, but family comes first. Sarah and Jake will need to sell some possessions and take out a loan against Jake's truck, which should bring in another $13,000. That leaves $30,000 that we need to cover. He stared at me. He continued, we figure if you liquidate your savings account and take out some loans, you should be able to handle that amount. His casualness was stunning. They had no idea how much money I had saved, my assets or salary, or my financial condition, but they thought I would use whatever I had to help Sarah. We've also been thinking, she said, that it would make sense for you to move back home for a while. You could save money on rent and use that savings to help cover the ongoing expenses while Jake gets back on his feet. Sarah nodded excitedly. It would be a relief if James helped coordinate things. Since our credit is wrecked, they suggested co-signing for a new apartment lease and helping us locate a financial advisor to get back on track. Sarah's crisis reshaped my life. I would manage the family's finances and help them recover from years of entitlement and bad decisions. I need you to understand something, James, my mother said, her voice sharpening. This is not optional. Family takes care of family, period. This is what we do for each other. Father's tone was stern too. If you don't step up now, if you leave your sister hanging when she needs you most, then you're not really part of this family. You need to decide what's more important, your money or your family. The emotional manipulation was shocking. They framed my probable refusal to bankrupt myself as a betrayal of family devotion, as if my reluctance to remedy problems I didn't cause showed I didn't love them. Sarah leaned forward, crying again. The kids have been questioning why Uncle James isn't around as much. How do I explain that their uncle doesn't love them enough to help them in trouble? Jake spoke quietly but authoritatively. Look, I know I made mistakes, but we're family, right? Families forgive each other and move forward together. Every remark implied my resources were theirs. My financial security was a tool for Sarah. That my years of meticulous planning and good choices were just to save them from their foolish choices. We've already told your Aunt Linda and Uncle Frank that you're handling the financial side of this situation, she said. They'd promised my help without my approval. They'd spent my money and time on Sarah's issues before telling me. Amazing arrogance. And just so we're clear, my father repeated, examining his legal pad. We're not talking about a gift here. Sarah and Jake will pay you back once Jake gets his real estate license reinstated and finds steady work again. This is a family loan to help them get through a rough patch. A family loan. Even if Jake's history of defaulting on parental loans should have indicated repayment likelihood. As if Sarah's overspending predicted budgetary responsibility. "We need an answer today, James," my mother remarked. "The foreclosure deadline ignores family discussions. School tuition is due Friday. Jake's attorney needs his retainer next week. It's urgent." Pressure was immense. 25 years of indoctrination taught me to obey, sacrifice, and put Sarah first. Every family gathering made me feel selfish for expecting equal treatment. Every holiday where Sarah's turmoil overshadowed my accomplishments. Every interaction where Sarah's financial desires were treated as emergencies and my troubles were downplayed. But something altered me in 18 months. Therapy with Dr. Olivia Harris. My friendship with Rachel showed me mutual respect. My self-made financial security. I learned to set and maintain boundaries. I said, "I need 24 hours to figure out the logistics, carefully. This is a big financial commitment and I need to review my accounts and see what's possible." Their relief was swift. They took my time request as consent to their strategy. Sarah grabbed my hand. "Thanks, James. I knew you wouldn't leave us." My dad nodded. "That's the responsible approach, son. Take the time you need to work out the details." My mother mentally spent the money. "Once this is addressed, we can resume Christmas planning. If Sarah and Jake recover, they could host this year." As I went home that night, I realized my family had made a big mistake. They showed how little they cared about me, how much they relied on my acquiescence, and how much they misunderstood me. They'd soon discover that calm, responsible James, who'd been disregarded for decades, could say no. More crucially, they were about to realize that the financial riches they thought they could access belonged to someone who'd learned the hard way that respect is earned. It must be earned. I invited Rachel to the follow-up. I wanted someone who knew me to teach my family who I was. Someone who could watch and assist me, keep calm under emotional manipulation. We returned to my parents' place Monday night to discover the same scene. My parents in their recliners, Sarah and Jake on the couch looking pregnant, documents on the coffee table. They thought my 24-hour request was a formality because I was configuring their rescue plan. "James," my mother remarked when we sat down, "we're so proud of you for stepping up like this. It shows real maturity and family loyalty." Sarah smiled for the first time in weeks. "Did you figure out how to access your savings? We were thinking maybe you could handle the mortgage payment first since that deadline is the most urgent." Jake nodded excitedly. "I really appreciate this, James. I know it's a sacrifice and I promise we'll pay you back as soon as I get my license reinstated." I pulled out a folder I'd prepared the night before. Bank statements from my checking and savings accounts, investment portfolio summaries, tax returns from the past 3 years, and a detailed breakdown of my assets and income that contradicted my family's perception. "Before we talk about what I'm going to do," I continued quietly, "I think you should know what I'm actually capable of." I gave my father the first document. His banking balance was $973. So I showed him my $48,000 bank account statement. Mom's eyes widened at my $112,000 savings account balance. The investment portfolio summary followed. $210,000 in multiple accounts with precise breakdowns indicating continuous monthly payments for 5 years. Sarah gasped at my latest tax return. Gross. $95,000. After taxes and deductions, my take-home wage exceeded my parents' retirement income. "I don't understand," my dad responded softly. "You never mentioned that you were doing so well financially." "You never asked," I said. "In fact, you've never asked about my career, my goals, my relationships, or my life in general. You've spent 25 years assuming I was struggling and needed guidance when the reality is that I've been building wealth and success while you were focused on Sarah's problems." Another document, my job contract, showed my stock options. If the company went public as expected, those options would be valued $375,000 to $550,000 in 2 years. "You could have helped all along," Sarah remarked, hurt and accusatory. "You've been sitting on all this money while we were struggling." "I've been building financial security while you were making choices that led to criminal fraud and massive debt," I rectified. "There's a difference between struggling and creating problems through poor decisions." First-time speaker Rachel. "After 8 months of dating James, I've seen your family ignore him and never ask about his career promotions, investment success, or future plans. But you believed he'd sell everything to remedy problems he didn't cause." Mom's face reddened. "That's not fair. James never told us about his financial situation because every time he tried to share good news, you'd change the subject to Sarah's latest crisis." Rachel said, "I've heard him try to tell you about his achievements, and I've watched you dismiss them or ignore them completely. I showed them images from Rachel and my Hawaii vacation 3 months ago on my phone. 5-day Maui vacation at a resort that cost more per night than their car payments. They had no idea I'd departed the country. It was impossible for me to fit into your life around Sarah's needs. Therefore, I lived separately from this family. I have a successful career, a healthy relationship, financial security, and personal goals that extend far beyond managing family crisis. Jake was bewildered and irritated. If you have all this money, why wouldn't you just help us out? We're family. Because having resources doesn't create an obligation to rescue people from the consequences of their choices, I add. And because this family has spent decades teaching me that my value is measured by what I can provide for Sarah's benefit, I meticulously spelled out the pattern. Sarah got pricey gifts and I got minimal acknowledgments every birthday. Every family event where Sarah's accomplishments were lauded but mine were ignored. All financial emergencies where Sarah received instant aid while I was denied. You told me on Thanksgiving that Sarah's family will always come first, and I will always come last, I said. You were honest about your priorities and I've decided to be honest about mine. I'm putting my own financial security and future first for once. My father reread the taxes. But son, if you can afford to help, doesn't that create some moral obligation to your family? The same moral obligation that existed when I needed help with textbooks, or when I was working 2 jobs to pay for college, or when I asked to borrow $500 while you were giving Sarah $13,000 for a house down payment. Hypocrisy silenced the room. They made my needs irrelevant and Sarah's wishes emergencies in the family. They aimed to use family loyalty to acquire undiscovered riches. I'm willing to help, I said. But not on the terms you've proposed. If you want my financial assistance, we're going to restructure this entire family dynamic first. Sarah appeared hopeful. What do you mean? I mean therapy for everyone to address the favoritism and toxic patterns. I mean equal treatment and respect moving forward. I mean written agreements for any financial assistance with clear repayment terms and consequences for default. I mean acknowledgement of how this family has treated me and concrete changes to ensure it doesn't continue. Mom bristled. You can't hold your family hostage with conditions and demands. I'm not holding anyone hostage, I said. I'm offering to help on terms that respect my value as a family member. If those terms are unacceptable, you're free to find other solutions to problems I didn't create. The power dynamic in the room changed drastically. They now needed me more than I needed them. For the first time, I could demand the respect and equality I'd always earned. What exactly are you proposing? My father whispered. The final document, a detailed proposal I wrote with an attorney friend, was in my folder. Terms, conditions, timetables, and outcomes. A paradigm for family financial assistance that treated adults with dignity and responsibility. This is my offer, I said. Take it or leave it. The document on the coffee table surprised my family. We signed a complete agreement that changed our family's operations, not only to write checks. I'm prepared to provide $55,000 to address Sarah and Jake's immediate crisis, I read from the first page. But this assistance comes in the form of a structured loan, not a gift. A 4% annual interest loan must be repaid in $1,100 monthly installments over 5 years. Sarah frowned. Monthly payments. James, we can barely afford our basic expenses right now. Which brings us to the second requirement, I said. Within 90 days, Sarah and Jake must complete a certified financial literacy course. A non-profit credit counseling agency must approve the course, and you must show proof of completion before obtaining loan proceeds. Jake shifted uncomfortably. That seems like a lot of hoops to jump through for family help. Less complicated than federal mortgage fraud prison, I said evenly. The third need is family therapy. All of us. 5 months of monthly appointments with a therapist. I choose to focus on family dynamics, partiality, and healthy communication. My mother's anger was acute. You want to drag us to therapy like we're some kind of dysfunctional family? We are some kind of dysfunctional family, Rachel said. Healthy families don't systematically favor one child while ignoring another for 25 years. On to the next page. The fourth condition is public recognition. Mom and Dad will admit our family's bias and apologize for my lifelong treatment at the next extended family meeting. My dad was shocked. You want us to humiliate ourselves in front of the whole family? I want you to tell the truth in front of the whole family, I said. The same family you told that I was handling Sarah's financial crisis without asking my permission first. The fifth criteria covered future financial requests. A family member seeking financial aid must present a written plan with clear repayment terms. No more emergency loans with unclear payback commitments. No more automatic cost sharing without income consideration. Sarah, I said. You'll need to write a letter to all the extended family members who've heard about your financial problems, acknowledging that you've been receiving preferential financial treatment from our parents for years, and that I've been unfairly characterized as less successful or responsible." Sarah cried. "That's so embarrassing, James. Everyone will think differently about me." "Everyone will think accurately about you," I add. "The embarrassment you're feeling is what I've felt at every family gathering where my achievements were ignored while yours were celebrated." The sixth condition concerned Jake's job. He had to take an anger management course and show stable work for 3 months before receiving the final loan. Jake argued, "You don't have anger management problems. You committed federal crimes because you couldn't handle the pressure of providing for your family through legitimate means," I said. "That suggests some issues with emotional regulation that therapy could address." The seventh requirement redefined family interactions. Every family member would contribute to holiday preparations, not only Sarah. Gift exchanges have acceptable expenditure restrictions. Individuals would pay for restaurant meals, not automatically. I told my girlfriend that Rachel will be included in family planning, holiday invitations, and conversations. No more treating my relationship as less important than Sarah's marriage. My mother was reading the document with great concern. "This feels like you're punishing us for trying to help Sarah through a difficult time. This feels like me demanding the respect and equality I should have received my entire life," I said. The fact that basic fairness feels like punishment shows how skewed this family's perspective has become. Maybe the ninth requirement was most significant. Monthly accountability checks to verify loan payments, therapy attendance, and family dynamics. I could call the debt owing immediately if the family resumed partiality and disrespect. I said my 10th and final criteria is that our parents will contribute equally to my wedding, house down payment, and other important life milestones, just like they did for Sarah's. My father was doing legal pad math. "James, some of these requirements feel very harsh. We're already facing a difficult financial situation. You're facing consequences for choices that were made over many years," I remarked. "Sarah and Jake overspent. You and Mom allowed that lifestyle while ignoring my financial obligation. Now you're deciding whether to accept support with conditions to stop it." Sarah looked at Jake, then me. "What if we can't meet all these requirements? What if the therapy doesn't work or we struggle with the payments? Then you'll face the consequences of your choices without my resources," I said. "As I did for 25 years, your choices affected me." I proposed something so big that the room became silent. Not only financial aid. Family interactions were completely restructured around mutual respect and equality. Mama asked, "How long do we have to decide?" 24 hours, I said. "You provided me the same time to liquidate my savings and adjust to Sarah's problem." I arose to go with Rachel. My father asked, "James, what happens if we say no to your conditions?" As we approached the door, I faced them again. "Then address your issues like I did. Through dedication, accountability, and learning that actions have repercussions." Silently, we reached the automobile. Rachel covered my hand as I started the engine. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen," she whispered. For the first time in my adult life, I'd used my power to demand justice instead of hoping for charity. Tomorrow I'd learn whether my family valued my resources more than their pride. My family and I attended our final group therapy appointment with Dr. Olivia Harris 6 months later. Progress was slow and hard, but the change was significant. The folks around me were nothing like the family who had convened for that emergency meeting in my parents' living room. Sarah and Jake earned awards in financial literacy. The teacher said their commitment to budgeting and debt management was the greatest she'd seen in 15 years. More importantly, they'd been paying their loans on schedule every month. Every month on the 15th, $1,100 cleared my account. Jake was employed as a construction project manager, using his organizing abilities without commission-based fraud. His anger management counseling taught him better stress and financial coping skills. His lawyers hoped for a plea agreement with community service and restitution instead of prison time. Sarah returned to nursing full-time, earning $42,000 at the regional medical facility. She also ran a small respite business for seniors, earning $800 per month. Sarah and Jake budgeted for the first time in their marriage and lived within their means. The kids adjusted better than expected to their new public school without the strain of an expensive private academy. They appeared happier and more relaxed. Sarah was surprised to find that public school teachers were as dedicated as private school faculty, and that their new classmates' diversity was enriching. My parents had the biggest change. Family therapy revealed unconscious patterns of conduct. Dr. Harris helped them see how their good intentions to help Sarah succeed had fostered reliance and entitlement, and he taught me that love requires self-sacrifice. I never knew, my mother stated during an emotional session, that we were telling James his needs didn't matter. I assumed we were helping the youngster who needed more. Public acknowledgement at Thanksgiving dinner was awkward yet healing. My parents apologized for decades of favoritism and its effects on my self-esteem and family ties in front of 15 extended family members. I was approached informally by several aunts and uncles who had seen the pattern but didn't know how to confront it. Once mandatory, monthly family dinners were now delightful. My work, investment, and Rachel relationships were now discussed. My parents cheered my elevation to senior software engineer like they did Sarah's. After I announced our startup's investment round, my father asked critical questions about equity allocation and growth projections. Rachel was welcomed into the family with genuine warmth. She helped arrange holidays, suggested family activities, and bonded with my mother over gardening. My parents even asked Rachel about her family rituals and included some of her ideas in our celebrations. The biggest change was my connection with Sarah. Therapy helped her recognize how accepting preferential treatment had affected our sibling bond. She wrote touching letters to extended family, apologizing for the financial difficulties and thanking them for their support. Sarah told me, "I realize now that I never really knew you," during one of our chats. "I knew the version of James who existed to solve my problems, but I never bothered to learn about your dreams, your achievements, your struggles that weren't related to helping me." Dr. Harris said healthy families appreciate each other's triumphs and support each other through struggles without constructing merit hierarchies. The goal wasn't to make me the golden kid or reverse the favoritism, but to recognize Sarah and me for our abilities and assist us through our struggles. Financial boundaries were second nature to our family. Sarah and Jake researched, saved, and bought a new washing machine. Instead of expecting family donations, my parents planned their anniversary vacation within their budget. When I said I wanted to remodel my residence, they gave emotional support and practical suggestions, not money. My investment portfolio reached $420,000, and the startup's IPO was early following year. I could become a millionaire by 30 with my stock options. More significant than the money was knowing I'd achieved success via my own work and judgments. 3 months prior, Rachel and I were engaged. As agreed, my parents would donate $14,000 to our wedding, the same amount they spent on Sarah's. Instead of attempting to impress or seem good, we graciously accepted their offer and planned a party that matched our values and interests. Another beneficial improvement in family interactions was uncovered during wedding planning. Both families worked together to create a celebration that celebrated Rachel's Mexican-American history and my family's customs instead of deferring to the bride's side. My parents actively researched about Mexican wedding customs and included items that made Rachel feel comfortable. After our final therapy session, Dr. Harris asked us to share one thing we learned about ourselves and our family. "I learned that I'd been confusing enabling with love," she remarked. "I thought protecting Sarah from consequences was helping her, but it was actually preventing her from developing resilience and responsibility." My dad nods. "I learned that staying silent when I saw favoritism made me complicit in creating an unhealthy family system. I should have spoken up years ago." Everyone was shocked by Jake's insight. "I learned that I'd been using Sarah's family support as a crutch to avoid dealing with my own insecurities and career challenges. The fraud happened because I was trying to maintain a lifestyle we couldn't afford rather than building a career we could be proud of." Sarah's reaction was particularly emotional. "I learned that I'd built my entire identity around being the child who needed rescuing. I never developed confidence in my own abilities because I always knew someone would fix my problems. Now I'm proud of what I can accomplish on my own." When it was my turn, I glanced around at these folks who'd hurt me yet worked hard to improve. I learned that setting boundaries isn't cruel or selfish. It's actually a form of love because it creates space for authentic relationships. And I learned that this family is capable of growth and change when we're all willing to do the work. Dr. Harris smiled as she closed her notes. "You all did great things. You've proved that honesty, accountability, and mutual respect can change even the most established family patterns." That day, my family felt different leaving therapy. Functional, not ideal. Challenges but ready to face them. Equal treatment and real caring replaced the decades-old hierarchy of worth in our relationships. Rachel and I married 6 weeks later in a ceremony that merged our families and customs. My parents accompanied me down the aisle with genuine pride and delight. Sarah was Rachel's bridesmaid, and her kids enjoyed the wedding. Jake, now 18 months sober and repairing his reputation, was someone I respected. Everyone cried at my father's reception toast. "James," he replied, "you taught us love isn't about giving someone everything they want. The key is knowing who they are and helping them become their best. Thank you for having the bravery to demand respect and for giving us the chance to become the family we should have been all along." This whole experience taught me something simple but deep. Acceptance and rejection teach others how to treat you. For 25 years, I accepted being treated less than Sarah because I didn't think I deserved better. After I demanded equality, my family had a choice. Honor me or leave. We grew stronger because they respected us. Sometimes refusing to enable bad behavior is the most compassionate thing you can do. Justice sometimes entails sacrificing relationships. When you stop sacrificing for love, you may find that you were always deserving. The family that put me last now puts everyone first. And that changed everything. As Rachel and I drove away from our wedding reception to our vacation in Italy, I realized how much my life had changed. The business went public 2 months earlier, making my stock options worth $800,000. My investments didn't hold the real riches. It was in the connections I battled to restore, the boundaries I learned to preserve, and the family I bravely and lovingly transformed.